I'm here with my good friend Ted Broer, and we're here to talk about the 10 foods that are part of a genocidal campaign against humanity.
Well, Alexander, I've done thousands of talk shows, and I've been involved with. I've spoken to over 1 million people at live seminars. I was featured back in the 90s on the platform with groups of up to 40, 50,000 people. I mean, we did stadium fulls of folks. And we talk about the top 10 foods never to eat and how the globalists are basically coming in with their depopulation agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to cover on your show today is I want to talk about the top 10 foods never to eat. So I want everybody listening to grab a sheet of paper and a pencil, because I'm going to cover some stuff right now that you've probably never heard. I'm going to cover some stuff right now that you need to know about, and we're going to tell you a few things that you probably kind of been misinformed about. And so we're going to talk about what's happened in the United States, why we're so sick, and why we're leading the world when it comes to heart disease, to diabetes, and to cancer. But even more stressing than that to me is the children.
Yeah.
Right now, the leading cause of death in kids age 14 and under, other than accidents in the United States, is cancer. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to go into detail with vaccination. So everybody grab some paper and pencil right now, because we are going to cover these top 10 foods never to eat in detail and the things that I've learned over the years. I was a state licensed nutritionist for many years here in Florida. I worked with thousands of patients on an individual basis and helping them to lower blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood sugar levels without the use of drugs.
Right, and you've been a celebrity nutritionist. You were the nutritionist for the Williams sisters when they were little.
I worked with Venus Serena Williams. I also worked with Pete Maravich before he died. I also worked with Mary Lou Retton when we were on the seminar circuit with her, talked with her a whole bunch. Mm-hmm. I also worked with David Ledbetter. He's a golf coach, and I've also worked a lot with Charlie Ward, a former Heisman Trophy winner. And so I've done a lot of stuff with celebrities.
So you're a serious, you're a heavy hitter in the world of nutrition. So I just wanted to get that,
Yeah, I'm kind of
established.
I'm the guy that's been doing this for 37 years. The same thing, the same program. We also have a podcast that we do every day, which we combine world events and nutrition as far as the latest research. But that's not the point of my show with you today, because I want to cover my top 10 foods never to eat, because they've changed over the years, because a lot of the foods we started talking about back in the 80s and the 90s concerning this, taken off the market. They were basically eliminated, and I had a lot to do with a lot of it on some of the national
Like
talk.
what, like Twinkies? I don't see
Twinkies.
Twinkies. I haven't seen a Twinkie.
They're still there. but what was interesting is this. It's one of those things that you kind of look back on, you kind of go, wow, we were at the forefront of this. I remember one time back in the 80s, I did a Christian talk show, Christian radio show. It was called WCIE. And it was Tom Trolson. And it was one of the largest Christian stations in Central Florida. In fact, it had huge coverage of both Tampa and Orlando back in the 80s. And I was so bold as to say that what you eat directly affects your health. Okay? Now, you think, well, that's really basic, Ted. I mean, everybody knows that. Guys, back in the 80s, that wasn't the case.
No, if you were a physician, that would get you, you'd lose your license to practice medicine.
Well, I had two physicians come after me because I made that statement.
Well, but you're not a physician. I mean, what are they?
But what happened is they basically came after me because I'm a nutritionist. These guys were MDs.
Right.
And they came back and they said basically that, we don't want you on the radio talk show with WCIE anymore because you're making these crazy statements like what you eat affects your health.
Wow.
Now, I kid you not. Now, one of these guys was Henry Redd. Now, he was an interesting character, and he brought another guy in, Merchant, may he rest in peace. Now, Henry was interesting. He was married to a woman named Alice Faye Redd, who later was discovered, and his wife, by the way, put him up to doing this, because I had talked about the top 10 foods never to eat on this talk show, and one of the foods I talked about were high-fat luncheon meats. And I included in that category bacon, sausage, ham, pepperoni, and hot dogs. And we'll cover that in more detail in just a minute, and what types of hot dogs are okay to eat. And the problem is she was called a happy homemaker, I kid you not, and she had a segment exactly right immediately following the show that I was on as a guest. And I had talked about how bad pork was to eat, and ham was bad to eat, et cetera, because of the sodium nitrite, which we'll talk about in just a second. And she became so livid for me doing this, she's the one who pushed her husband to do this. Now, they're both dead now, so I can talk about this freely. But what was interesting about this is, within 2 to 3 years after they literally had me taken off the air on that Christian station, she was arrested for running a Ponzi scheme. I'm not making this stuff up. And she was put into prison. And her husband was also dragged into this Ponzi scheme thing. And what ended up happening, she ended up coming down with cancer in prison. And because she was a big chairperson for the Republican Party in Florida, kid you not, she was pulled out of prison and allowed to come home to die. I'm not making any of this stuff up. And what the craziest thing was, that's how far we've come now in the past 30 years. When you said something like, your health is affected by what you eat. Charlatan, charlatan, you can't say things like that.
I know.
mean, we've come so far. In fact, it got to the point that I got so fed up with it that I went into the secular market, started working a lot with different radio and TV talk shows around the country, and then finally in the mid-90s, early about 94, they brought me on the seminar circuit with President Bush and Barbara Bush and Colin Powell and Schwarzkopf and a whole bunch of other globalists that I now know are globalists, to tour the country for 6 years. I did over 100 seminars, including on the seminar circuit we had, all of these guys, including a lot of notoriety, including Zig Ziglar and a lot of other guys. So I was blessed to really get to know a lot of people and rub shoulders with some of the world's elite. I mean, I know Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
And he's as weird as they say he is in person, okay? I know Bill Cosby. I spent the day with Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
I know all of these guys, and yes, what you're reading about Bill Cosby is really probably true because that guy has got some serious issues, which we all know now.
Wow.
So when I talk about knowing Colin Powell, I was on a first-name basis with General Powell.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I told him that I would head up the chair for his run for the White House in the state of Florida if he wanted me to back in the 90s, because we wanted him as president. But of course, he was completely discredited because of the uranium cubes.
That was awful. It was
They set him up. He was set up because they wanted to make sure he wasn't viable. And here's what he said to me when I asked him to run for president.
Uh-huh.
I said, General, will you please run for president? He goes, Ted, I can't. And I said, why can't you? He goes, my wife Alma's afraid as the first black president that I'll be assassinated. And I said, I can guarantee you that you'll be at risk. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But we need you because we need the stability of you in the White House, because he was the real deal.
He had so much. He just completely he lost all of his credibility. He had a lot of credibility.
Oh yes, and I knew General Schwarzkopf because they asked him to run for president too, and he told me that Congress was a bunch of babies. He would never run for Congress because he didn't want to be a politician. Mm-hmm. And may he rest in peace. He was another really nice guy. So I know I could give you a list of people like this: Margaret Thatcher. All of these people I've either met or known or appeared on the platform with, and a lot of them I spent the days with. So it's been an interesting run for me. So I've had a lot of fun at a very early age. So I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've literally helped thousands of people to improve their health from a clinical standpoint in my office, and I've helped millions on radio and TV. So I feel privileged that we can talk on the show today, and I can do this for your group. The first food on the list, never to eat, in case you guys ever thought, if you were listening to this video, when's he going to get to the point?
Right.
Or the high-fat luncheon meats. I just mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Bacon, sausage, ham, pepperoni, and hot dogs. Because remember, guys, most of these meats are cured, and they have nitrites in them. And when you take sodium nitrite and you put it into your stomach, it reacts to stomach acid, forming what's called nitrosamine. And this is one of the most cancer-causing agents known to the intestinal tract, including pancreatic cancer. Oh. So you've got to get away from eating foods that contain sodium nitrite. And you say, well, you mentioned a lot of pork products. The World Health Organization came out with a study just a couple of years ago and said one of the primary causes of cancer globally was the consumption of pork. And this is bad. In fact,
is it because of pork or is it because of the nitrite?
It's because of the pork. And it's interesting to me because I know the Livingston Wheeler Foundation, they used to tell people not to eat pork. They were a big cancer clinic back in the 70s and the 80s.
Yes.
And they said it was difficult to recover from the cancer if you ate the pork. And also I've learned this, that if you look, there's a really good article you can read. It's from the Biological Therapy, Volume 1, Number 2, 1983, by Professor Hans Reckwig. And it's called The Adverse Influence of Pork Consumption on Health. And it goes into detail on all the different diseases that are transmitted through pigs and how bad pork is for you. So guys, I'm not picking on the pork industry because I'm certainly not going to hurt it with this podcast today. I haven't heard it in 37 years, but I'm telling you that you as an individual need to stay away from the other white meat.
Wow.
Number 2 on the list, this is so important, is this. Is aspartame. Now, I don't know. In fact, I've read entire chapters. If you go to my website, healthmasters.com, you can read entire chapters that I've written on aspartame in my books. In fact, one of the chapters is called Aspartame, A Chronicle of Crime. This product is so bad, it's basically a brain entrainment molecule. Yes. And what happens is they use phenylalanine, aspartic acid, and paint thinner, which is methanol, which cannot be made non-poisonous, to manufacture aspartame. And the problem is there are aspartic acid receptor sites in the brain. And so when you ingest this product, it releases dopamine. So it's extremely, extremely addictive because of the dopamine trigger. But what it does, it wipes out a lot of people's short-term memories. Plus it causes brain tumors, brain cancer, seizures, headaches, optic nerve degradation, severe problems with depression. This is a really, really bad product, as are all these chemical artificial sweeteners. If you want to use a good sweetener that's going to be caloric free, use stevia. Much better product, or you use monk fruit. But guys, stay away from the artificial sweetener. Now I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
Years ago, I was at Celebration, Florida, and I was talking to a man who was the manager of the Thomas Kincaid Gallery there. His name was Scott. And I'll never forget, I walked into the Thomas Kincaid Gallery, and this guy was just down in a diet soda. And I said to him, I said, Scott, I'm not going to buy a photo from you today, but what I am going to do is I'm going to give you some advice. And he says, who are you? So I told him. So he went to the internet, he plugged me in and got 100,000, 200,000, million hits, whatever you get with me nowadays. I never look at my own reviews because I don't care. It doesn't make any difference. Right. I'm going to keep doing what I do anyhow. And he said, wow, you really know your stuff. And I said, well, I'm a research-trained biochemist. I was trained at Florida State University. I was a college professor for 2 years up in Tallahassee. And I said, and I've been in business for many, many, many years, and I've worked with thousands of patients. And I'm telling you that this product causes brain tumors. Now, here's how it causes brain tumors in a lot of people. When you combine sodium nitrite, which is in the luncheon meat, with aspartame. So if you have a pepperoni pizza and a diet soda, or you have a ham sandwich and a glass of iced tea that you sweeten with the stuff in the blue packs, or you go out basically and you just binge on food and drink diet whatever because you're trying to basically stay thin, which makes it literally impossible, but you're always adding this nitrite into your diet with it, you form what we call in neurochemistry a DKP. That's an acronym for a diketopiperazine. That degrades to form what's called a nitrose urea. And Alexandra, nitrose ureas are the most effective agent known to man for producing malignant brain tumors in laboratory
Oh my
animals.
goodness. So this is the combination of nitrates and aspartame, basically.
Yes.
Wow.
And the craziest thing about this is that people don't get this. They don't really understand that this is what they're doing. So when they eat a diet soda, drink a diet soda, have a diet and pepperoni pizza, they're literally giving their bodies the ability to create these chemicals. It's kind of like putting baking soda and vinegar together. It doesn't make any difference. Yeah, that's right. It doesn't make any difference whether you believe it's going to do it or not. It's just what it does. It's a biochemical reaction. This is the big problem. When you take the aspartame and the diet sodas and you stick them together like this, you cause all kinds of problems. Now, let's look at the other two ingredients. Phenylalanine in high concentrations also causes permanent nerve and brain damage in people. So I've got a pastor friend of mine right now, and he's a great pastor. He's got a huge church, like 20,000 members, like 6 different campuses. And I mean, this guy and I are like buddies. I mean, he's like one of my best friends. And I've known him for many, many years, over a decade. And the other day he called me up and he goes, well, I got my blood test in and I've got some problems with my blood test. I said, okay. So he had high levels of phenylalanine. And I looked at him and I said, David, I said, are you drinking diet sodas? And he kind of dropped his head. He goes, well, I'm drinking Red Bull. It's got phenylalanine. It's got aspartame in it. I said, dude, how much of this stuff are you drinking? He goes, I'm drinking a lot. And I said, look at your phenylalanine levels. High levels of phenylalanine. And he was slurring his speech during his sermons.
Oh, my goodness.
I kid you. I said, David, I was wondering why you were slurring your speech. I thought you were some kind of cold medicine. I said, dude, you got to come off this stuff. And he goes, don't worry, I'm off of it. I'll never touch it again.
But now, was he able to get, because I see people are really addicted to that stuff. For me, I have an interesting story with that. My stepfather's boss was Don Rumsfeld right at the time when it was pushed through the FDA, and we were drinking it had passed in France, so we were drinking Condrel. That's what it was branded in France, and we had it and we thought, oh, this is great or whatever. But it tastes so bad. I mean, it just destroys the flavor.
Headaches, real bad headaches. Yeah. So let's go back to Scott at the Thomas Kincaid Gallery.
Right.
So I'm in there talking to Scott, and he starts laughing. I mean, like a hyena laughing. I mean, like ridicule laughing, like, why are you talking to me about this? I'm going to continue drinking diet sodas because, like, basically I'm hopelessly addicted to them, right? And I looked at him and I said, Scott, I said, I'm just trying to help you. I don't know you. I don't have any agenda here. I'm just letting you know the product causes brain cancer. And so I left. About a year later, I went back over to Celebration with some friends, Dr. Lenny Giammatteo, who's a professor at Southeastern University, and his wife, and my wife. So the four of us were walking around Celebration, and the Thomas Kincaid Gallery was still there. It's gone now. And I looked inside, and there sat Scott. And I thought to myself, I don't want to go back in there again because I don't want to get laughed at again because of the aspartame and the brain cancer, so I'm going to walk down the street. Well, a few seconds later, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, Ted, Scott wants to talk to you. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll go back in and talk to Scott. I'm thinking, what's he going to say now? So Scott was sitting in the chair in the front little reception area, and he looked bad, looked really bad. And I said, Scott, how are you doing? He goes, I'm doing badly. And I said, what's wrong with you? And he goes, I have brain cancer. I kid you not. And I looked at him and I said, Scott, I am so sorry. I warned you. I begged you. I pleaded you. I know, Ted, what can you do? And I'm like, we'll pray for you. And we did. We prayed for him. And a few months later, he died. But here's the thing, guys. It causes that glial type of tumor that's really, really aggressive.
Yeah.
It sends tentacles through the brain.
Yeah.
I've only seen one person recover from a glial malignant brain tumor because modern medicine does not have a treatment protocol for that. And this guy worked with a doctor out in Colorado, up in South Carolina, from a nutritional standpoint, was actually able to recover from the glial tumor that was the size of a baseball with tentacles that they removed, and they had given him 90 days to live, and he's alive now 2 or 3 years later.
Wow.
So that's not the point of this show, but the point is this. We're trying to warn people right now, this is a brain entrainment mechanism. This is what this is. This is to get you deep into that alpha brainwave, theta brainwave state when you're watching TV and you're being basically mesmerized or hypnotized by the flicker rates to believe the mainstream media. Now, your listeners will understand every bit of what I just said because that's what they're doing to us, because they have to do what they need to do to us to try to make us basically vegetative. They don't want us to be alert. Statin drugs can make you vegetative. High blood pressure can make you have a walk around in a cloud. Fluoride, that's another one we're going to talk about in just a minute. It's unbelievable what it does. It was first used in Nazi concentration camps. So all of these different types of drugs that people are taking on an ongoing basis cause all kinds of health problems in these people that are taking these drugs. So we always tell folks, avoid these drugs, avoid these chemicals in your diet, avoid these top 10 foods never to eat. Now, number 3 to stay away from are trans fats or margarines. This is one that people need to really avoid. If it's not butter, organic butter, don't put it in your body. Coconut oil's okay. Olive oil's okay. That's about the end of my short list. You can stay with those 2 oils along with organic butter and be quite fine. But reality, guys, is don't use margarine or hydrogenated oils or trans fats in any concentration from anything ever. That's one of the acid tests for me. If I see that on the label, I won't eat it. I won't put it in my body. I'm done. That's
so hydrogenated oils, basically. So what does that do to you?
It causes a real problem with women as far as with breast cancer. It also causes a massive reduction of fertility in men. Surprise, the globalists want to reduce fertility too, because one of the principal things, remember, from the Jason scholars was they wanted to reduce worldwide fertility and reduce the population. So they're in the full-blown thing to do this. In fact,
it's happening, isn't it? I mean, hasn't fertility gone way down?
Male sperm counts are down by like 90% in some areas. Wow. Because people don't understand that if you don't get the right nutrients into your body, it causes a lot of problems. Let's talk about that for just a second.
Okay.
What we have here, hang on a second. Let's do hydrogenated oils. Let's finish that.
Okay.
So we use real butter. So let's jump to number 6, which would be soy. We'll come back to 4 and 5.
Okay.
Soy products need to be avoided. I have so many of my friends that are health conscious who used to drink soy milk and eat soy protein on a regular basis. Soy is too high in phytoestrogens. It's too high. It's equivalent like taking a birth control pill with a glass of soy milk. It really messes up your body chemistry. And we have male receptors. We have estrogen receptor sites in the male body. Let me explain to you why that works. Back in 1975, when I was at Florida State as an undergraduate, I had a professor. His name was Dr. Wiese. And he was a German nationalist who had come over after World War II who had been stricken with polio. And I took a class with him called embryology. It was the fall of 1975, unless you think my memory's not working. By the way, I'm 61 years old and my memory still works pretty good. And what was interesting is Dr. Wiese said something one time in class. He said, all mammals are conceived female. Now, this is something that most people don't understand. And what happens is, as the gestational process proceeds, the Y chromosome for the male, the XY chromosome, kicks the mother's testosterone in, and the testosterone starts to cause what's called secondary sex characteristics. In other words, the ovaries turn into the testicles, the clitoris turns into a penis, okay? And the brain chemistry shifts from a right brain dominant hemisphere from a woman's brain to a left brain dominant hemisphere male's brain. This is what happens with little boys.
Well, I've seen, if you look at fetuses, they look like females. They all look like females until maybe for end of the first or maybe second trimester, right?
And what ends up happening basically is the Y chromosome that triggers the testosterone
in the mother's body. I had never heard that. That's wild.
Now, here's what's interesting about this. If a woman is taking exogenous estrogens into her system, in other words, if she's eating meat that has female growth hormone in it,
right.
if she's drinking milk that has female growth hormone in it, if she's drinking soy protein, which acts as a female growth hormone.
Then there's pesticides and GMO. Pesticides are estrogen mimicking.
And what ends up happening is you chemically castrate the little boy in utero.
Wow.
That's what happens. We chemically castrate the little boy in utero. So what happens is that little boy, in many cases, is born with much smaller genitalia because there was not sufficient testosterone for proper sexual and cellular
development. Yeah.
Okay. And that child basically is many times born with a right brain dominant hemisphere instead of a left brain dominant hemisphere, and it was done to that child without that child's knowledge and without the mother's knowledge. And then another thing happens. In the event that you're a mother and you decide that you can't breastfeed and you're going to go ahead and give a child soy protein as a formula, it does the same thing to the child. Even if that child has a right brain dominant hemisphere, if you get a lot of soy protein to that little boy, within several months, it will shift to a left brain, it will shift from a left brain male hemisphere to a right brain female hemisphere. And the little boy, I'm not saying he's gay, I'm just saying he acts feminine. This is why we have so many guys now that are basically, they're the metros. They basically, they're very feminized. And the reason this has happened is because, again, these boys were subjected to exogenous estrogens while in utero, against their wishes, and their mother may not have known how bad soy protein was.
And it's just it's on a continuous basis because
it's everything. It's like you said, it's the pesticides, it's all of this stuff. And so that's why number 6 is soy. And that's the other thing. And soy lecithin is okay, but if it has soy products in a product, I won't drink it either. I remember years ago, I was at a health food seminar, and they had a big blender, a big Vitamix, and they were basically showing us how to make a protein shake. And they were doing good. Everything was organic with the ice and everything else. And finally, at the end of the presentation, he takes like a full cup of soy protein and dumps the soy protein in the blender. And I looked at the guy and I said, I'm out. I'm done. I'm out. He goes, why? I said, no way. I said, my body, because I was conceived female, as all mammals are, has estrogen receptors in it. Okay? And if I drink or eat soy protein...
In this general area.
It's called gynecomastia, you have enlargement of the breast tissue. And then I'll never forget this, and I felt bad for the guy. There was a guy behind me who wanted a glass of the shake, and he said, I drink soy every day, and it's never affected me. And he had a tight T-shirt on. He literally had C-cup breasts. And if you ask my wife this, it's a true story. And I looked at the guy, and I said, okay, I got to go. And I left. And you think, well, why is that happening? Well, remember, estrogen and testosterone are antagonistic. Okay, they cancel each other out. So if the woman's continuing to produce estrogen, okay, and you're getting estrogen in the diet, or in the food you're eating, or in the pesticides you're being exposed to, it's canceling out all that testosterone, and so the boy doesn't develop properly. This is what's happened. This has been one of the goals of the globalists, by the way, with all of these xenoestrogens they put into the food supply and in the pesticides. And we have to understand, this was their goal, because they want to reduce the population. That's one of the reasons that the sperm count is down by 90% now. So guys, it's very, very important that you realize you never put soy anything into your mouth, period. I won't even sell it at our website at healthmasters.com because I tell everybody.
Well, I think even women should avoid any kind of... Because then your body tries to process it like it's a natural endogenous one, but it isn't, and then it starts to create a whole, you end up with breast cancer.
Fibroid tumors.
Yeah.
Fibroid tumors. So there's all kinds of things that it does that you need to avoid. And one of the other things with breast cancer, this is a sidebar here, we've got a magnesium deodorant that we use that you put under your arms. It works absolutely wonderful.
Wow. No, that I want to focus on that. But go ahead. Yeah, I want to buy that. That sounds great.
I'll send you a bottle. But what's interesting about this is that now studies are showing that when you have aluminum chlorhydrate in antiperspirant deodorant, especially in women, and they come down with breast cancer, these cancer cells are loaded with aluminum.
Well, and you're putting it right into your lymph.
Right into your lymph nodes. That's right.
Yeah.
So you never want to use aluminum chlorhydrate anything in your body. But let's go back to our top 10 foods because I'm jumping all over.
I know.
Number 4 to stay away from is shellfish. Now, quite frankly, after the core exit in the Gulf of Mexico, avoid it, man. I mean, just come on, guys. Same thing with the Pacific, with what's going on with Fukushima. I mean, we're having a massive.
And even in here, where on the East Coast, Northeast, it's just the mercury and heavy metals and other stuff that's in the water.
I'm not saying seafood. Grouper, red snapper, orange roughy, sea bass are all fine. They're all fine, especially wild salmon, and a phenomenal product. But really, you need to avoid shellfish. And what I always tell folks is this: a lobster is an arthropod, a cockroach is an arthropod. All a lobster is a giant cockroach.
It's a sea cockroach.
That's
Yeah.
all. And it needs to be avoided. It's really, really a toxic food. It can contain all kinds of high levels of arsenic, lead, and mercury, along with oysters. And I had shellfish poisoning back in 1983, before I got convicted about all of this stuff. And I tell you what, I have never been that violently nauseous in my entire life for about 4 days. I mean, gosh, I thought I was going to be hospitalized. So that was enough of it for me. I've never touched it since, knowingly or willingly. So it's one of those things you've got to learn to stay away from.
So shrimp is bad. Crabs are bad.
I think it tastes great. I mean,
Yeah.
I love the way lobster tastes. If you're going to eat the lobster, no matter what I said, make sure you use real butter and not margarine. But I don't eat that stuff anymore. And the reason for it is this. You know, I realized how important my health is, and how if you're not careful with your health, you end up in a situation where you start having all kinds of degenerative diseases, especially at the age of 61. And I realized that if I want to maintain top mental acuity, you know, I can't go out and get drunk on a regular basis. Not that I have gotten drunk for like 40 years, but you can't do that. You start losing too many brain cells,
Right.
you start losing too many memories. So we have to understand something, guys. If you want to take care of yourself, you got to eat clean. You got to do the best you can to avoid all of these contaminants that the globalists are throwing at you, trying to reduce the population and reduce fertilities. Number 5 is the junk food category. That goes back to the Hostess Twinkie that you had mentioned earlier.
Right.
Twinkies, ding dongs, cupcakes, all of that stuff needs to be avoided, and here's why. They're almost all loaded with high-fructose corn syrup, and high-fructose corn syrup causes fatty liver. In addition to that, it makes you insatiably hungry when you eat this high-fructose corn syrup. It shuts off the mechanism in the brain telling you that you're full. It turns the mechanism on telling you that you're hungry, so you want to eat more and more and more of these foods. That's one of the reasons the manufacturers use it, because it allows them to sell more product and increase their bottom line revenue stream. So guys, it's really important that you avoid the junk food category. In fact, one of the books that I wrote, I've got many books in print.
And they're usually made out of a lot of GMO corn.
That's why the GMO corn is pesticide. I mean, EPA
Yeah.
classifies it as pesticide. I mean, the Bt toxin. You don't ever want to put anything that's not organic corn in your body because of the toxicity associated with it. And of course, it's causing all kinds of problems with the gastrointestinal system now too, and causing all types of inflamed guts. I mean, you can see it. Corn fed mouse or lab rat on basically this GMO corn for a period of like 30 to 60 to 90 days is completely covered in cancerous tumors and boils. You can see that picture on my website. So don't want to ever put this mess into your body. It wreaks havoc with the intestinal flora and with the gut itself. And then a lot of this stuff is also loaded with glyphosate. And one of the very own studies that Monsanto did on glyphosate, I can read you the study, but it's in the other room, says that it causes what's called cellular necrosis. I have a good friend, which is death, cellular death. I have a friend of mine just 2 weeks ago. In fact, she's a national talk show host's wife. And he was basically, had to rush her to the emergency room. She was vomiting blood. And I know them well. And they had to go in and they ripped her open from the sternum all the way down to the pubic bone. And they found out that part of her intestinal tract had died. And she was eating a lot of GMO foods. And so guys, this is not cool. And see, this again is what they're doing. Because remember, a lot of us are going to outlive a lot of our children are going to outlive their parents because of this Hostess Twinkie generation. But then a lot of our other kids are coming down with so much ADD and autism that's out the charts. I mean, that's the one thing I was always told at the seminars that I did that people really listened to was the problem with ADD. But I was always asked not to really address the problem with immunizations. Years ago, I broke a story when Gonzalez died and some of the other guys died who were doing the research on autism and a compound called nagalase that died mysteriously. I broke the story on a national talk show. It had millions of listeners, millions of views on that on YouTube. And it's been broken up into segmented stories now, and it's all over the internet. And what I found is this: there are a lot of smoking guns pointing at autism, including immunizations, including glyphosate, including GMO foods, including chemicals, pesticides, aluminum. There's all kinds of things that are involved in this process that I don't want to talk about today. We can do a whole show just on it. But what's interesting about this is I've always told folks, look, if your child is diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, they want to put them on a drug, an amphetamine salt, either Ritalin or Adderall, which is a Schedule II drug in the same category with morphine, opium, Percodan, or Demerol. And these are strong drugs. These are not M&Ms we're giving these kids. And what ends up happening is these kids can get addicted to these products very, very quickly. Methylphenidate, is Ritalin. Methamphetamine is the stuff on the street. very close molecularly. And that's why a lot of these kids and parents and everybody else, it's kind of like, using cocaine. In fact, Gene Hayslip, head of diversion control for the DEA years ago, said that a lot of people don't realize that Ritalin is like cocaine, and that it's one of the top 10 drugs slated for pharmaceutical theft. And they have to really work with it on what's called diversion control, because people are taking this stuff and they're snorting up their noses.
Wow.
Get high on it. So guys, before you put a kid on a drug like that, try dietary changes. We have a program called Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy, and it talks about how to take that dietary change, and a bunch of books that talk about it, and take a kid to a brand new level. I've got a brand new book out. It's called Breakthrough Health. It's been out for a couple of years now, and it goes into detail on ADD and autism. But guys, it's really important that you understand that there's certain things that you have to learn to avoid in your diet, and certain things you have to eat in your diet. In fact, we've got several products I'll show you today, Alexander. We've got a product. This is our Ultimate Multiple. This is a product that basically uses cellulose gel caps, and it's probably the best multivitamin on the market. It's called the Ultimate Multiple for a reason. And we use only methylated B vitamin. We do a show on that, which allows the body to process them. That's why you feel so good on that particular product. In addition to that, it uses methylcobalamin instead of cyanide cobalamin as the B12 source. And we use a powder in a capsule, so it basically it dissolves.
Gets absorbed quickly.
Okay? And then we have another product I want to show today, and it's called HGH Stimulate. This is not HGH. This is a product that stimulates the production of the pituitary gland to release human growth hormone. And what this product does, and I use it twice a day, it massively increases lean muscle mass, and it also helps to burn body fat. My wife says it helps get rid of her cellulite, which I thought was kind of cool. But what's also interesting about all of this stuff, it's like a natural Viagra in men because of the nitric oxide aspect of it, but it doesn't make you go blind or deaf like some cases of the Viagra has shown because of the optic nerve and auditory.
Wow, I've never heard that. That's awful. Yeah, what I understand, nitric oxide, it's a vasodilator or something.
That's right. It does a great job as far as helping the body get nitric oxide. And a lot of times it'll cure ED by itself by just using nitric oxide supplements. But this is one of those products that it's our number one selling product, and I use it twice a day. And the thing I noticed with more than anything else with me, besides the natural Viagra thing, being 61 years old, I've got a wonderful wife, I'm glad she lets me take this, is that the fact that it increases lean muscle mass and it makes you really, really strong in the gym. So I love this particular product. But guys, these are just two products I want to kind of showcase on today's show, because I want you guys to realize there's natural things that you can do, like eating clean, or getting my last book, Breakthrough Health, or ordering these particular types of products, because it allows you at that point to feel good and have really good energy. I mean, think about this. I mean, we're bombarded daily with all kinds of crazy information, and we have to continually deal with stressors in our life, and the stress elevates cortisol. And we have another product, by the way, we're going to talk about today. It's called Cortisol Buster, which helps to ameliorate the symptoms of stress and cortisol. So what we always tell folks is this, guys, if we're being bombarded with all of this stuff on an ongoing basis, what we need to realize is this. We need to make sure that we eat as clean as we possibly can. We need to be drinking distilled water or reverse osmosis water. If you're concerned about the loss of minerals in distilled water, we have a mineral supplement you actually put into the water to remineralize it without putting a bunch of inorganic calcium in it. Because remember, when you put calcium in your body, that's inorganic, hard for the body to deal with it. It increases the risks of atherosclerotic plaquing and hardening of the arteries.
Oh.
And so do statin drugs. Statin drugs cause hardening of the artery. They cause calcium buildup in the arteries. Statin drugs cause heart disease.
That's crazy.
We do a whole show on statin drugs. I wrote about that extensively in Breakthrough Health. But we need to avoid those. But number 6, we need to say, we've already covered that. That was soy. 7 is chlorine and fluoride in the water supply. Guys, I just mentioned this. Drink distilled water, drink reverse osmosis water. Fluoride was first used in Nazi concentration camps because they needed to make the inmates servile and infertile. That's what it was all about. They wanted to make sure they could reduce fertility rates in the concentration camps. So these were slave labor camps. They were camps. That's why Steven Spielberg, when he received the Oscar for Schindler's List, he said he was dedicating it to all the people who were still alive, of the 4.5 million people still alive in concentration camps at the end of World War II. 4.5 million. This is Steven Spielberg's own voice, so this is what he said. And the reason I remember that is because I thought they killed all the Jews and all the Christians and all the Catholics and everybody else in the concentration. No, there were slave labor camps, and they were 4.5 million of them still alive, in Schindler's List. And so what was interesting about this is is the fluoride's first place they used. Now, in 1945, we liberated the cow and these other horrible camps. And what we did is we got a hold of all of the research, the medical research of these camps. 1946, 1947, we started putting fluoride in the water in the United States. I mean, you think that's coincidence? I don't know. All I know is this: when Stanley Kubrick did Dr. Strangelove in the 60s, if you listen to you watch the movie again, you guys, you'll verify this. He was fighting the war over fluoride in the water.
Wow.
That's why the general started the war. He says, I'm not going to have the fluoride in the water. We've got to get the fluoride back out of the water because of what it's going to do to the American people. Wow. Watch the movie. Because Stanley Kubrick was an insider, but he also liked to expose these clowns. And there's all kinds of stuff we could talk about with Eyes Wide Shut and Clockwork Orange and all the other things that he talked about that were subliminal in his movies. But we need to realize that fluorine is a toxic agent.
So did you get sort of into conspiracies because of being a nutritionist?
Well, it's interesting because of what happened to me with these medical doctors that I told you about back in the 80s, who told me I couldn't say people's health was dependent on their diet, and because I was eviscerated by some of these guys over the years because I would actually tell people the truth, I began to realize a lot of what we were being told wasn't truth. Right. So I started doing a lot of research. In fact, I really didn't wake up to a lot of this stuff because I didn't want to know about it. I'm kind of one of those guys, I don't go with this. Sure. I got too much other stuff going on.
Yeah, of course. I got bills to pay, I got kids, whatever. Yeah.
When 9/11 happened, and I saw 9/11, and I saw those buildings pancake collapse, and then I saw Building 7 come down, I thought, wait a minute, guys, there's something wrong here. Okay, and then all of a sudden, this Bobo story with PBS and how these buildings collapsed, and they never even addressed Building 7. I thought, no, wait a minute now. Yeah. So at that point in time, a couple of years after that, I started doing a lot of research, and now I've read hundreds of books on these topics, and read thousands and thousands of, literally, that's thousands and thousands of articles. Today, I recycled 15,000 pages of material, the photocopies that I've made for my talk show for the past year on research that I used on my own show, and we talk about world events and latest health research on the show every single day because I want people to realize that a lot of what you're being told, and of course your listeners know this with your website, that a lot of what we've been told is just a downright lie. Yeah. In fact, what I've done with you, and I want to help support what you're doing, is we have a coupon code. Can I get that out for you real quick?
Please.
But so it's basically just going to be Bruce, BRUCE, which is your last name, BRUCE Bruce 5. And what happens is anytime you order anything from our website, just put Bruce 5 and you're going to get a 5% discount on everything you order across the board. It doesn't make any difference what it is. It's a fully active coupon for everything, including the specials, the 3-pack specials, everything we have are going to be made available to you guys for that because I want to support this broadcast that Alexandra's doing, that she's so kind to have me on today, and I want you guys to realize that there are other things that you can do and there are other places that you can go to get more information like the Forbidden Knowledge website. And by the way, number 8 are high-fat dairy products. You really need to avoid high-fat dairy products. I don't even know, and if you're going to drink them, okay, but make sure they're organic. Because I don't like that pasteurized, homogenized mess at all. I wish it was legal to buy raw milk, organic raw milk in all states, but it's not. And so you got to be really careful because of the mucus, because of the allergies, and because of that female hormone, that bovine growth hormone brought to us by Monsanto again, that basically is in most of these dairy products. I remember years ago, it was interesting. I was on a show with Kathy Fountain. It was a Kathy Fountain show. It was on Channel 13. It was a CBS affiliate back then in Tampa. And I came on and I talked about the top 10 foods never to eat, et cetera, et cetera. And we had a 37% market share of 13 Tampa Bay counties, which is monstrous. And they brought me back on 6 months later because they had such a good response. And what happened is she told me, she said, well, you can't talk about aspartame because the manufacturer, which was in Monsanto, of course, said that if you do this, we'll basically pull our advertising as far as our diet drinks from your station. So I was not allowed to speak about that. I thought, wow, how strange was that? First true censor I had ever seen on this. Well, then a few months later, they had a program called The Investigators, and they were investigating bovine growth hormone from Monsanto, and they turned around and did a full show on it, and they would not allow them to air at Monsanto because it's such a fit. In fact, they did a lawsuit against the station for censorship and for wrongful suspicion. They lost their jobs over this.
Oh, that's right. This is a long time ago.
I'm telling you, this is what I'm talking about, like 90s now. We're talking 20 years ago.
Right, yeah. I ran, there was a documentary made about it, and it was way ahead of its time. This was before people were really talking about this stuff.
Before they got those guys, they got me on that same show. And right after that, Kathy Fountain, she quit the show and she was done. Had enough of all of this stuff. But I tell you what, this is the kind of stuff, the kind of pressure they pull. So I've been involved in seeing a lot of this. And number 9, before I say what number 9 is on these top 10 foods never to eat, let me tell you what you can drink. If you want to drink green tea, it's pretty cool stuff. I drink it every single morning. I've got a product called the Purple Stick, and I put it in a glass of water with some vitamin C every day. I drink it full of vitamins. I guzzle it every single morning, first thing in the morning. It gives me a kick in the butt to get moving in the morning, and it helps me get a better workout. Then I drink my HGH Stimulate, and then I go and I train. Now, what's interesting about this is I used to be a coffeeaholic.
Yeah.
When I was in graduate school at Florida State, I used to drink 18 cups of coffee a day. And it ended up basically at the age of 27, I came down with heart disease, Alexander. I almost died. I've never told you this. I was in bed for 3 months. And I had to come off the coffee. I had to wean myself off of this stuff because my adrenals were so fatigued. And what ended up happening, I learned very quickly that high amounts of caffeine increase the risks of heart disease, high blood pressure. It also increases the risks of breast cancer because of the methylxanthine component of the caffeine. Plus, it drains down the adrenals. Green tea doesn't do that. And the other thing that coffee does, it really, really increases cortisol, the stress hormone in the body. So you really have to avoid coffee as much as you can. Now, if you want an occasional cup of coffee, once or twice a month or something like that, who cares? But don't be drinking it every day to the point you're addicted to it. If you don't get it, you get bad headaches.
I'm thank goodness I don't care for, don't care about it. It's nice if you go to, once in a blue moon to like a really good Italian restaurant and they have really good espresso or something, Well,
I love coffee. I mean, I can still get addicted to it, but after I drink it for a day or so, I feel absolutely awful. And so
were you going to say something about regular black tea? Is that bad?
Black tea's okay, but I don't care for it as much as I do green tea. I think the green tea's better. And so, but you need to avoid all of the chemical processed teas. That's really, really important. You don't want to be using stuff that has chemical agents that are put into it to extract the stuff off the leaves or whatever. You don't want to do all of that stuff. And number 10 to stay away from are alcohol products. If you have if you have an occasional glass of beer, a glass of wine, whatever, who cares? It doesn't make any difference. But this lie that if you drink every single day, you're going to get healthier is stupid. It increases the risks of pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism, osteoporosis, and breast cancer. In fact, the original study, when it was brought out, it said that if you don't drink, don't start, because it doesn't offset the side effects. I mean, resveratrol, you get that in a supplement. They're saying it's from red wine. And I've never heard anybody say this. My life was a wreck. My life was a total wreck, and I started drinking. And everything got better. Okay? But I've heard a lot of people say I was doing great. And I started drinking, and I lost my wife, I lost my job, I lost everything.
Right.
So guys, don't do that. And realize this, I'm not talking about a glass of beer a couple times a month or once a year, or however long you want to do it, or a glass of wine. I'm talking about every single day the systemic drinking that so many people do now because they believe that drinking alcohol will be okay. Plus, remember,
well, there have been studies that say that there are benefits, not just the resveratrol, which is a separate issue.
But remember, though, that all the drinking studies are always paid for by the alcohol manufacturers.
Oh, wow.
And remember, there are other side effects that are associated with the alcohol. There's all kinds of natural things you can do to get the same benefits without the use of alcohol. I mean, alcohol is a neurotoxin. I mean, let's be real. I mean, your body has to stop everything it's doing when you drink just to metabolize this mess to get it out of your system because it's so poisonous. I mean, it's not a healthy product to use, especially with women. Women have a much harder time metabolizing alcohol through their livers than guys do. I mean, it's just one of those things that you need to stay away from, including the risks of breast cancer. So guys, if you have an occasional glass of beer or wine, make it that special time. Once, twice, 3 times a year, whatever you want to do. But don't be drinking on an everyday basis. Like, don't put down a 6-pack every night and think you're going to get healthier because it stops the production of an enzyme called lipase, which helps to burn fat instead of store fat. That's why so many guys who drink beer every day, they got beard bellies. It's because of that. But those are our top 10 foods, and we're just getting started, by the way, on a different way the globalists are trying to kill you. We've got like another dozen shows that we talk about other things that also affect you as much as these things do. So, Alexander, thank you so much for having me on. Remember, guys, the coupon code for Alexander for Forbidden Knowledge TV is Bruce5 5. That'll be the number 5, not written out F-I-V-E. Bruce 5, the number 5, and you'll support this broadcast and help all of us in the alternative media to continue doing what we're doing.
Dr. Brower, thank you so much. You're the greatest. You're a great friend. You're a great man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't know about all that, but thank you.